May your lovely grace abound in me, and may your love be shared with others through these open arms. Make this heart a place.
This last year, I prayed and prayed that God would allow me to make it to retirement so that I had more time for ministry. And the last 2 months, right before my retirement date, I had an incident on the job where I was shocked by high voltage, 480 volts, by equipment that malfunctioned. But I wasn't hurt. And after working 41 years for the electric company, God answered my prayers, I feel, and I was able to retire. And so I was able to volunteer and work in the food pantry, as well as working with John Scott in his ministry of transformation. And then I think God opened a new door of opportunity for us here at Southside. Bill Reed is a member of the Western Hills Church. And he said that because of his failing health, he needed somebody to volunteer to teach his classes that he'd been teaching for 23 years at the Abode Transitional Housing Complex. Dan Leaf and I teach classes 4 times a week there at the Abode Ministry to men, about 20 men in each session. And it's been real rewarding this year to be able to teach in that ministry these men and share God's love and mercy and grace with them as they are deciding to make changes in their life, change the direction of their life. Grace has really overflowed in my life this year as I've been able to retire and get into these different ministries. I personally feel that God's grace has been responsible for all the good things in my life, the good blessings in my life. The really great thing about grace, the really wonderful thing about grace, is that it doesn't just stop with me, but that I am able to share that, to offer God's great, wonderful grace to other people.
God is.
Lindsay and I were your typical young family. We had our first daughter, Ella, and we were going to expand our family.
We struggled for 5 years with infertility, and it just wasn't happening. And we just kind of thought maybe we're not supposed to have any more kids. And I started praying, just thanking God ahead of time for what He was going to do, because I really felt like He was going to do something, that something good was going to come from this. I just didn't know what. And so I changed my prayers from, begging God for another child to, thanking Him for what He was going to do in the future.
We had decided, Lindsay looked at me and she's like, I'm ready to adopt. And I looked at her and I was like, really? We're there. She's like, I'm there. I'm done. And so we just started making those calls.
Well, and I had to take a pregnancy test because I had to get off my progesterone if I was pregnant, and the nurse had said, you have to take a test. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I will. And so I found an old pregnancy test that was expired, and I thought, this thing isn't going to work.
From when we had Ella. So this thing was 5 years old.
It was old.
Okay.
I don't even, and I thought, this thing isn't going to work. So when it showed up positive, I thought, something's wrong with this test.
God took us from this struggle of being this new young family, the perfect little family, one child, ready to have number 2, to going through that long tribulation and teaching us a lot about His will, and then just overflowing us with grace and blessing with another child. And here we are with 3, and now we look like a deer in headlights, like, oh no, now what are we doing now? Talking about the theme of grace and God's grace that He gives us freely. He doesn't, He gives it to us. It's a gift. And that is what He gave us in Kaysen and Everly.
Sing hallelujah. You are all I need. Sing hallelujah.
What happened? Well, I just saw things that were changing in 2013, towards the end.
I guess the main thing was a lot of our past came up, you know, and it would, I don't want to say came up, but
I think Satan was just there. He was ready.
Yeah.
He was just looking, and there was an open door.
Yeah, and he knew how to hit those points with me, you know?
Yeah.
And it just progressively got worse, and eventually we separated, and I moved out of the house. I said, I got a wake-up call. And I just fall asleep at the wheel, and I wrecked my car. And, you know, I was by myself. And, of course, I had my family, you know, helping me, but I didn't have her.
I had to gain the trust and know that it wasn't the person that had left was coming back. It had to be David, one that, you know, puts God first above all. And that's who I wanted back. When all this happened, I just kept praying, and, you know, I didn't know what was God's plans, but I knew whatever it was going to be, it was going to be okay.
Where we are now, I mean, we're at a better place than ever, I think. You know, it's better than ever, and neither she or I have done anything to deserve this happiness that we have. I mean, and it is all by God's grace that we're here. Mm-hmm. Is it 11? Hmm? 11. I think she loves me.
Each day I fall on my knees.
God called us to foster a little over a year ago, and so we got licensed and opened our home up, and we're blessed with a son that we adopted out of foster care. That's Dax, and we were also blessed with a baby girl that we brought home from the hospital. And you know, we had her till she was approximately 11 months old, and the system, you know, decided that she, after quite a few court dates and some time in court, even with us, the courts decided that she would be placed with a relative. And that day that they came to pick her up, to take her to that relative, was probably the hardest day of our life.
I prayed really hard. And he told me that I could keep going and that more kids needed a place and that they needed a home, and that what we did for Angel was not forgotten by him. And I pray for her every day that she'll know Jesus and that she can become a Christian, and that I'm honored to be able to pray for her, that I can give her that gift. If I'm not with her every day, I can pray for her.
Kind of the motto that she and I have been living by is, we don't want to stop this because of Angel. We want to continue because of Angel.
It is hard, but God just provided so many people from our kids' school, from here, from family, friends that just told us that we can keep going, and that God's grace does overflow.
Be shared with others through these open arms. Make this heart a place where tender mercy overflows.
life in Liberia was full of the grace of God every day. I mean, everybody knows the story of how I got Ebola and how God saved my life. And that is a dramatic expression or experience of God's grace. But there were so many other things along the way and around that story of my illness that to us were such evidence of God's faithfulness and grace in our lives.
One of the stories that I like to tell as an illustration of the overflowing of God's grace was how He protected the children while Kent was sick. He was in Liberia for 9 days sick in bed, and we were given a secluded home to live in, and we were surrounded by family and friends. And Kent's sister-in-law flew down from Michigan to take care of the kids once I went to Atlanta, and took them home with her to Michigan. And they lived with her for 3 weeks, 3 weeks while he was in the hospital. And during that time, they did remarkably well. Like, you wouldn't know that they were scared or frightened, or I'm not even sure how curious they were what was going on. They knew we were sad, and they knew Daddy was sick and that he was coming to the hospital in America. But they were so good and flexible and obedient and respectful.
Cooperative.
Very cooperative. Like, nice. And they were so well taken care of that it was just God's telling. I felt it was for me. It was a gift for me to know that the kids were so well watched over by Him and His Holy Spirit that were just, it's like they were living in a little bubble. It was so great. And we're all back to normal now.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
And may your lovely grace abound in